1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project podcast. If you're new to the 1078 Project, the 1078 Project is a nonprofit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal here at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers and their families as they navigate the difficult time after an officer-involved shooting or critical incident. In November of 2022, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting, and the days and weeks to follow left me feeling alone and without a lot of assistance. And my goal, and the goal of the 1078 Project, is to ensure that no other officer has to go through that. Today's guest is a retired police officer from New Jersey. He's a survivor of post-traumatic stress and multiple suicide attempts. He is the founder of the Dented Development nonprofit, which is a nonprofit that provides practical support to law enforcement officers. He's been on the Soft White Underbelly. He is the co-author of Man, You Are Crazy, which is a book that's getting ready to come out relatively soon. He's a motivational speaker, and he's an overall awesome dude, super down to earth. He's a cop's cop. Today's guest is Kevin Donaldson. Hi, Kevin. Welcome in, man. I'm super excited to have you on the podcast. I had the opportunity to hear your story on the Soft White Underbelly, and I instantly knew that I had to have you on. Obviously, I wish you were sitting in the chair next to me, so it's a little weird to do it through a computer screen. I wish we were in the same room, because I think there's something to be said about sitting next to the guy and having a conversation that way. But this is the best that we could do, so I'm super excited to have you on. And I'm super excited for our community to hear your story. You've been through a lot, and I want people to be able to hear that. So we kind of talked off camera, and my goal is that you get to tell your autobiography. And I think even the things that happened early in your life from the story that I heard are really important, and they kind of made you into the man that you are today. So if you want to dive in, we could start in your childhood, and you can start, where you grew up, and we can move on from there.
It's crazy when somebody wants to hear about my biography. Listen, I'm a poor white kid from Atlantic City area. That's all. I mean, that, in all honesty, that's. And now when somebody wants to hear, okay, where'd you grow up? Like, what do you care? Everybody had to grow up somewhere.
Yeah, but I'm a poor white kid from North St. Louis, so a lot in common.
It's very strange. It's very humbling, but here's the beauty of it. I've never met anybody who was interesting. I've never met anybody who accomplished something in their life without some junk in their past. Yeah. If you think about it, they're the most interesting people in the world. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in the Atlantic City area in New Jersey, and I grew up in the 80s, in the late 70s, early 80s. And at that time, the mob ruled everything. Okay. It was an interesting time. You knew who these guys were. You knew they were serious. Even as a kid, you knew they were serious. They were all under indictment one way or another. And, when I started going to high school, I had to go to a Catholic high school because my sending school was really bad. I went to a Catholic high school, and guess what? All those mafia guys, they're all Catholics. So they send all their kids there. There's a great story that I remember. So one of my better friends in the world when I first went to high school was a kid named Phil Leonetti. I almost said Vincent Falcone, and that'll tie into the story. So his name was Phil Leonetti, right? His dad was the underboss of the Philly mob. Crazy Phil, they used to call him. His dad was ultra smart, good-looking guy, but he was the underboss to a guy named Nicky Scarfo. Nicky Scarfo was probably one of the most ruthless mob bosses that ever walked the earth. He was crazy. He's like 5'6", but he's absolutely insane. At the time, Nicky Scarfo was under indictment, and Phil Leonetti turns on him. Well, guess what? I don't get to see my best friend no more. He just goes. Gone.
Really?
Yeah. There were several times. The Merlinos, that was another prominent name in the mafia. The Merlinos went to school at my high school, which was Holy Spirit High School. And I remember one incident in the parking lot where we're watching from the second floor and there's a big to-do in the parking lot. The priests are out there, and everybody's sort of gathered around, and it's Joey Merlino in the parking lot. Like Joey Merlino at the time, he was an up and coming. They called him Skinny Joe, and he eventually became the boss of the Philly Mob. Now he's a podcaster like us.
No way.
And but that was like normal, It was just these are just guys who live around the area. But the problem with high school for me, I had a real jacked up home life. My father was really just a son of a bitch for many, many, many different reasons. So I would always, whenever somebody has that in them, they have a tendency to act out. They have a tendency to do things that are maybe a little bit less than ethical. So I stole, I fought, I did drugs, I drank. 14 years old. I don't know how old you are, Matt. I don't think I ever asked you that. But out in St. Louis, did they ever have Mad Dog?
Yeah,
MD
my dad used to talk about Mad Dog. Mad Dog 2020, yeah.
Mad Dog 2020. So my favorite was Kiwi Lime. And I was a bigger kid, so I used to go to this place. It was called the Liquor Locker, right? And they would serve me. So I would go in before school, and I'd get a big Mad Dog 2020, and I'd drink that, and I'd go into school. And I thought it was cool. All my friends thought it was cool. I'd smoke a cigarette before I went in, and this is the 80s. This is the life of the 80s. Nobody said anything. Nobody really cared all that much. But that was me. And that wasn't because I wanted to do that stuff. That was because I was acting out, and
Yeah.
I was always trying to find my place in this world. That was just the way that I did it in high school. Fast forward 20 years from that, I was at a party. I was still drinking at the time. And I drank a lot during the day, and somebody put a bottle of Mad Dog 2020 in front of me, Kiwi Lime, and I drank the whole thing. And man, I don't ever remember a hangover being like that when I was a kid. It was because it's so sugary. It was the worst hangover I ever had in my life. So yeah, my days of Mad Dog are way behind me. So I go to college, and I was actually looking forward to going away to college. I went for I was bright, so I got away with a lot of stuff. I was able to fake it until I made it. I didn't have to study all that much, and so I went to college. I was able to play football in college, but I
Position?
I was offensive. Well, I went in as an offensive tackle. I moved to offensive guard because the tackle was a sophomore, and I just dropped some weight, and I wanted to play, so I got to play.
Yeah.
I was really able to reinvent myself. That was the time when my life, which was chaos at home, started to get clamped down a little bit. I started doing my own laundry, making sure my room was spotless. I think I would have fit real well into the military. Unfortunately, due to football injuries and things of that nature, the military rejected me. 4F. And, I was just listless. And when football ended, I'm still trying to find my place in this world. I'm still trying to, I talk about my primary identity. So my primary identity, I was searching at that time. I was a searcher, and everything I tried didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I went to school for. I initially went to school for theological studies. I wanted to become a pastor. I was tied in. As crazy as I was still tied into the Bible. I was still tied into my faith.
Interesting.
But I had this great class called Bible as Literature. Dr. John Becker totally erased my faith, because you start reading the Bible as a book, it's violent. I mean, it's super, super violent. They talk about I remember the passage exactly, which did it for me. So I'm a big King David guy. I love King David.
Yeah.
And Saul sends him out, and he's trying to get David killed. And he sends him out to the front lines. And he says, I need proof that you killed 100 Philistines. And the way you're going to prove it to me is you're going to send me their foreskins. So nobody just takes a foreskin. They chop the whole thing off, right?
Yeah.
In walks in the town square David with this cart full of penises, and all the women cry out, Egod the Philistine is dead. Like, they knew what his stuff looked like. And I was like, man, that's like, this is God. This something's wrong here. Totally got rid of my faith. I finish up college. I get my postgraduate degrees, and I figure, okay, well, that's the only thing I got left is to be a teacher. I taught high school for a year. I fucking hated it. I just hated teaching school. I love the kids. I couldn't stand the other teachers. Just not my cup of tea.
Did you go back to the same area to teach school?
No, I stayed up in North Jersey. So I went from South Jersey to North Jersey. I did a total transplant. I had to get away because all my friends were criminals. I mean, true criminals, stealing cars. And, to this day, a lot of my friends are still in trouble or still in jail. I would have been one of those kids in jail because when I was a kid, if you did something, I had to do it better. I had to prove myself.
I feel you there.
I wasn't getting that support at home. I wasn't getting that reinforcement at home. So I went to go seek it myself. If you stole, a pack of candy, well, guess what? I had to go steal a hot tub. And I did steal a hot tub. And I was real mad.
You got to tell me this story real quick. Tell me how you stole a hot tub.
It's new construction houses. I just get my license. I have a Ford F-150 pickup. I love that truck, man. It's 85, straight six, 300, Hearst shifter. I loved it. It was all I could afford. I think it was like $1,500. But we go drive into this new construction place. We start walking around looking for anything that's not nailed down, including nails. And in the back, there's this hot tub. And they had just placed it. They set it. It wasn't plumbed or anything. We wiggle it out of a house. There's 3 of us. Me and 2 other guys. We're wiggling it. We're running it out of this house. Why we're stealing a hot tub, I have no idea. What the hell do we think we're going to do? This is the thought process. Am I going to set it up in the backyard and run a garden hose in it? It's like why I would do it. I don't know. So I'm driving down the road. We muscle it into the back of my truck. I'm driving down the road with a hot tub in my back. It's pink. And then, there's marshes around where I grew up. We go hide it in the marshes because we're exhausted, until the next day, and we're going to come get it. We go back the next day, and I was so mad that somebody stole my stolen hot tub. Somebody took it. Yeah, but I think it was an inside job. But, so
when you're growing up and you're involved in all this stuff, did you have any interactions with the police at that time? Like, did you have any run-ins with the law? Like, did you ever get in trouble or?
It's 1980s, bro. So 1980s are a little different. So here was the deal. You messed around and you got caught by the police. There was a couple things that were going to happen. It's either they were going to knock you around, send you home, or you're going to get taken home to your parents. Or the third possibility is actually the worst possibility. They'll knock you around, then take you home to your parents. I opted every single time, go ahead, do whatever you got to do to me. Knock me around. They give you a pop in the head. They give you a hit with the stick. No pepper spray at the time, thank God, because I don't do well with pepper spray. And every time I opted for the beating. I was actually grateful for it. It's curbside adjustment, right?
Yeah.
And it did. It adjusted my personality a lot. But there were times. Sometimes we won. Sometimes the cops won. We would do something, see the cops, start running, and sometimes they'd catch us. Like there's a story where I think we were shooting windows with a BB gun, and there was a wooded area, and we go running into the wooded area. Now I was smart enough to know that once you run into a wooded area,
you better not get caught.
You just drop wherever you're out of sight. The last part you drop, just stay there and keep your eyes open. And my buddy's about 5 feet away from me. I see the cop coming, and I'm standing there, and I see the cop pick my buddy up and just boom, right across the face, like full fist, no pullback. So right in front of me, as I'm laying down, the cop's wallet falls right in front of me. So I steal the cop's wallet. What's he going to say? It's mutually assured destruction. He can't say that he punched a little kid. We're not little kids. We're 13, 14 years old. He can't say he punched a little kid. I got your wallet. I got cash. I'm good. But I was a little shithead.
Yeah. I think that's pretty true for a lot of cops, actually. Like, I really do. I think most cops come from broken homes. Most cops, I won't say most cops, but a lot of cops come from broken homes. A lot of cops weren't the best kids. I definitely was not the best teenager. You know, I definitely wasn't.
So throughout my travels, I've run across a woman who is just incredible. Her name's Stephanie Samuels. She's a clinician. She's a therapist, and she runs Copline.
Okay.
She's done a lot of stuff with LAPD. She lives in New Jersey. She also works at the Brain Bank, which now the Concussion Legacy Foundation accepts police and first responders' brains, not just impact athletes. There's a reason for that. So the average NFL player has 3 concussions. Then they're retired. The average cop in a 5-year career has 5, and they're still on the job. If you have a CTE or a TBI, that will present itself in much the same way as post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Couple in with what we see as police officers with that traumatic brain injury or CTE from the concussive and microconcussive hits. So first time I spoke with this woman, she gets on the phone with me and she says, most cops come from a broken home. There's a history of sexual abuse. They get involved in some type of contact sport. They're really good at taking care of other people, but they're really bad at taking care of themselves. And I'm listening to this woman, and my buddy hooked me up with her. And I'm saying to her, I'm like, I called my buddy up and I said, did you tell her anything about me? And he goes, no, I just introduced her. And I said, because she pegged every single thing in my life. You know, even when I was a cop, even when I first got on and got married, I was a shitty husband because, I was sleeping all day. And when I wasn't sleeping, I was miserable because I was tired. You know, and we're used to talking to a person a certain way and with a command presence. Yeah. It's not a question whether we want you to get in the back of the car. You're getting in the back of the car. And that doesn't translate real well to civilian life. And I don't really know too many cops that can turn that on and off. But this woman, Stephanie Samuels, so she's doing some groundbreaking research with CTs and stuff. And she's the reason I donated my brain to the Concussion Legacy Foundation. I'm not doing a plug for them or anything, but I have. Because
plug it up, I don't care.
But I'm pretty sure that I got a CTE. And I'm going to give everybody a little test. Don't do it now. I'm telling you, don't do it now because you're going to scare the shit out of yourself. You take your finger and you start at arm's length, right? You start your finger at your arm's length and just start moving it into your nose. Stop when you see double. Yeah, I did. She said it, and my first instinct was to do it on air. And no, I'm not doing it. So I did it about 2 weeks later. Bro, I'm pretty far out there. You know, my brain's broken.
Yeah, I wrestled in high school, and I several concussions wrestling.
Yeah, it's crazy. But,
and it's funny that you say that because you hear like all of the side effects of concussions. You're impulsive. You're easy to anger. You can't. It's hard for you to rationalize. And then you connected it to PTSD and how that presents itself with a lot of the same characteristics. You're doing a lot of the same things. You're having a lot of the same reactions to stress and anxiety, and it's interesting. I never made that connection before.
Nobody's made that connection until she started bringing it up. So really? she even goes deeper into why you get traumatic brain injuries and CTEs as a young child and things like that. I mean, one of the biggest proponents for young people which is crazy. Both my kids play football. For young kids not playing football, the impact does not cause a CTE in a young kid. It's the lack of neck strength. And if you think about football, when I was a kid playing football, they used to have you do bridges. Like, you're a wrestler, so you know exactly what a bridge is. They used to have you doing bridges. They don't have people doing. I'm a football coach. They don't have you doing bridges anymore. Although, guess what I'm doing this year for my kids, because I'm the head coach of the Pee Wee team. I'm going to be having them do bridges. I'm going to try to protect these little heads as much as I can. Yeah. So you learn those little things, and so that trauma that I went through as a little kid made an adult that wasn't really well adjusted.
And I heard you talk about this before. You said a lot of the trauma that you had as a little kid was more mental than it was physical. There definitely was some physical there, but mostly mental.
There was a lot of my father was very racist, and he's dead, so I'm going to shit on him all day long. I am. You know what? I've stayed silent about it because there's still family members that are alive, but
Yeah, it's a hard thing to talk about too.
There was there was more than physical and more than mental, and I'll leave it there.
Okay.
But the mental abuse. So can you imagine having a little kid play sports and strike out and then get screamed at for striking out, like you just lit the house on fire? That
Yeah.
was one thing. Then it's breaking down your any type of confidence that you might have. He used to call me the laziest white man alive. Well, I'm 9 years old. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? So I grew up thinking anybody that's not white must be lazy.
Yeah.
But we all know that's different. You know, we all know that there's laziness. Laziness just happens throughout. And people who know me now, when I say that, they have a tough time believing me. Because I work my ass off. I'm working, 20 hours a day. If I'm not doing my primary job, I'm doing podcast stuff, or I'm going to speak, or, I'm writing a book, or I'm writing articles. I have my hands in so many different things now. I'm the exact opposite. Now, is that a result of him calling me that? I don't know. But you don't tell that to a little kid. All I can do now, I can't change what happened in the past. All I can do now is try to break that generational curse with my kids.
Yeah.
I got a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. When they do something wrong, I'll get on them. But if they do something wrong when they're trying, if it's a mistake, I use it as a teaching experience.
Yeah.
It's a coachable offense, So, that's the weird thing. So, like, if anybody is listening and they've experienced any type of emotional abuse, I can take a punch, man. I cannot take mental abuse.
Yeah.
It's like, just to break it down to its lowest form, imagine having an argument. You and I are having an argument. You turn your back on me and walk away. Look, you don't turn your back on me. I think that would agitate the situation so much more.
100%.
So, I mean, that's a very low form of emotional abuse. But you look at it from a bullying standpoint. Because my home life was so jacked up, I was the biggest bully. I was.
Yeah.
There was a kid growing up, his name, and he's a friend of mine now, and his name's Jay Aponte. He's actually a cop now, so it's kind of funny. He was we moved to a suburban area out of the city, and we didn't have a large range of ethnic diversity. So Jay was one of the few Puerto Rican kids that I know. And he was heavy. He was lower economic, so, he wasn't dressed so was I, but, I saw him as a weak person. He would always wear jeans that were too tight, so his ass crack would hang out. I'd drop quarters in there or throw dirt in there. I'm telling you, I was a little motherfucker. And I'm not going to endear myself at all. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. I was a really bad person. We used to play something called the J game. First of all, his name was Jesus Aponte. And I never knew anybody. When you look at the spelling, it's Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I never met anybody like that. So we would make fun of that. And then we'd play the J game where, a punch was worth 2, a kick was worth 1. And it was really screwed up. And, but why did I do that? I did that because I had zero control at home. I had zero support at home. And so I found somebody who I can give that back to and sort of bring in a little bit of control, a little bit of stability in my life. Unfortunately, what I did to that poor kid, I never forgot. So Jay ends up leaving school after 8th grade. He goes to a different high school than I go to. And I felt so bad. It's different now because with social media and stuff, these kids don't ever get a break.
Yeah.
So Jay could at least go home. For 30 years, I looked for this kid. For 30 years. And then Facebook came along, and I was like, oh, God. So I started looking. Do you know how many Jesus Apontes there are on Facebook? There's like 1.5 million. I couldn't find him, but I messaged every single one. It took me like 5 years after Facebook came out. I would message him and say, hey, did you go through the Absecon school system? Did you go through and finally, all of a sudden it hit. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know if you remember me or not. And, but I treated you really poorly when I was a kid, and I really want to apologize. And he goes, bro, we were kids. I forgive you. And I'm like, you fucking son of a bitch. Why? Just give me something. Call me an asshole, dude. Like, make me feel better about this.
Yeah.
Him and I get on the phone, and I had him on relatively early on my podcast. It was sort of a healing thing for me.
Yeah.
And he turns out he's a cop in New York. And he goes, bro, I forgive you. I forgive you. And guess what? So to this day, Jay and I are really good friends. I've had him on my show twice. He's so super supportive of us. We care about each other's families. But here's the shitty thing, and this is something that I ingrain into my kids. I blew a 30-year friendship with a guy that I should have been friends with instead of the guys that I was friends with, because I was a little dickhead. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, you got to show yourself a little bit of grace there. You're just trying to you're trying to get the things that you weren't necessarily receiving. You know what I mean? And all of us were like that. Like you said, most cops come from broken homes. Most cops don't have the best upbringing. A lot of them live in impoverished areas. And I find myself doing that same thing. I'm like looking at my kids, the way that I'm trying to raise my kids, and thinking back to the young Matt and why the young Matt was doing the things that he was doing and why he was acting the way that he was acting. And a lot of it comes back to you're trying to fill those voids. You know what I mean? You're trying to make yourself feel better. You're attaching yourself to something, throwing yourself into sports to try and find that meaning behind it. Like you said, you're trying to find that identity.
Well, you're trying to fill that big giant hole in you that's broken. Cops do this. Listen, cops are the kings of doing this. How many? Don't answer this. This is a rhetorical question. How many cops do you know got a girl on the side? Up here, they call them gumats. All right, so because those people who come from that type of environment, they still carry that hole with it. I still carried that hole with it. I never went in that direction, thank God. But they have this hole inside of them, so they figure, you know what? If I get a girlfriend on the side, that's going to fill this hole. Yeah. They get a girlfriend, doesn't work. They get another girlfriend, or they're sleeping here, they're sleeping there. Then when they figure out that the girlfriend isn't it, they say, well, you know what? Maybe if I get promoted, that's going to fill that hole. That's what's going to do it. Or maybe if I get 10 awards for life-saving and meritorious service or valor or whatever it is, they're going to fill it. Nothing's going to fill that hole because they haven't faced all that stuff in their past. Something I've been doing a deep dive into recently is facing my past and what I went through back then. Because I have to be, I'll be 50 years old this year. I have to fix these problems because I'm through, I'm not 100% through my trauma as a police officer, but they all tie into one another. Because all I was doing for years and years and years, and I say this on Soft White Underbelly, is I was running away from that prairie fire. Yeah. And cops are brilliant at that. They numb it. They hold it down. The backstory to that is before I was a cop, I was traveling coast to coast, and I would read on planes, before smartphones. And I picked up this book. It was Surviving Worst Case Scenarios, something like that. And in there was surviving a prairie fire. There's no prairies in New Jersey. I just read it. Why? I don't know why I read it. I read the one attacking a bear because there's a bear in New Jersey. I read, survive.
Aren't there a bunch of bears in New Jersey? Isn't it like the highest per capita amount of black bears in the whole country or something like that?
Now we do. They're all over the place.
I think that may be a Joe Rogan stat. I'm not sure, but
well, no, they walk through my backyard. I live in Parsippany, New Jersey. Right? They walk right through my backyard. I see them all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah, and they're not small, but they're timid. So black bear, they're not a real big threat unless I always say they'll leave you alone unless you try to touch their junk. But but you can.
Sorry, back to your story, brother.
Yeah, God, I forget. Oh, so there's the way. So when we're born, our instincts will tell us to run away from danger. Like that's inbred into you from millions and millions of years ago. But with a prairie fire, when you see that fire coming towards you, if you run away, the prairie fire is going to grow, and before it becomes unmanageable, it's going to consume you and you're going to die. Mm-hmm. When all you had to do was see that prairie fire and run straight towards it. Think about how difficult that would be to run straight towards danger. Cops do it every day, but you run straight towards that danger. You're going to get through to the other side. You're going to be a little scarred. You're going to be a little charred, but you're going to be alive. And it's totally counterintuitive to everything in our soul to do that.
Yeah.
So think about it this way. You got a credit card. Don't pay your credit card bill. Just avoid it. What's going to happen? It's going to grow. Don't pay it next month. What's going to happen? It's going to grow. By the third month, it's going to be unmanageable. And all of a sudden, you're making minimum payments with some late fees involved, and it just grows and grows and grows. So
100%.
All I did for the first portion of my life was just ignore my problems, figuring they're going to go away. They're in the past. I don't need to dig them up anymore. What's done is done. I can't help it. Unless you face it, unless you run towards it, it's the only way for healing. And that's I didn't learn that until 20 years later.
Yeah, but that's the importance of your podcast, and that's the importance of 1078 is that you got to think back to the young Kevin is who was teaching you that.
We need to be the new teachers.
Yeah, who taught you to do that? Who taught you to run towards the problem and address it? Nobody.
I teach my kids that. I teach my kids again. It's breaking those generational curses. It's like you got a problem. Let's get out. But and I'm going to make a societal comment right now. We live in a society that does that exact thing so well. They run away from the prairie fire. I'll give you an example. My oldest son, got into a fight in 6th grade. And listen, I was kind of proud of him because I know the kid he fought. I coach him in football. The kid probably deserved it. Punches him in the nose 4 times in the middle of the cafeteria. Everything's got cameras on them. Now, because there were 2 kids that I coached, I think the toughest thing to do is to sit in front of somebody who you have conflict with and learn that conflict resolution.
Yeah.
I took both kids out to a pizza place with permission of their parents, obviously. And I said, you two, you go over there and I want you to go talk about it. And that's what they did. And guess what? Within 15 minutes, they're laughing, they're joking, everything's done. It was a valuable teaching moment where you guys had a conflict. You got to get over it. You got to move forward, because if you don't do this, it's just going to keep bubbling and bubbling. And it's going to present itself again.
Yeah.
So I go back into the school and they make you try to sign a contract. The kids aren't going to talk to each other. The kids aren't to make eye contact with each other. And I said, stop. The principal, because again, I'm a little dented when it comes to this stuff. I tell the vice principal, I look at my son and I say, cover your ears. I say, you can take that contract and you can shove it straight up your ass. I'm not doing that. Both these kids play on the football team. They're going to interact with each other. I said, I'll tell you what, you guys are failing our children. You're perpetuating this problem. I did your job for you. Okay? I resolved this conflict. So I'm not signing that. They're not going to stay away from each other. If there's a problem, you come to me. I don't want any of this to blow back on my son. So if you got a problem, you come to me. And he's a little guy. I mean, he had a Napoleon complex, and he tried to bully a little bit. And I'm like, so because of how I bullied when I was younger, I am so anti-bully. I was that kid standing up for the kid that was getting bullied.
Yeah.
And this guy tried to bully me, and I'm not the guy. I'm not an overly tough guy, but I just don't care. If I get hit in the face, I don't care. So, that guy didn't know his audience. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So, after college, I taught high school for a year and I couldn't stand it. I remember looking myself in the mirror and saying, there's just no way I'm doing this for 35 years. I was able to get a job real quick and I quit. And, it was a tough decision to make, but it was the right decision to make. And I sort of bounced around from job to job. I sold cars, and I got a job with a company that I traveled me coast to coast and doing this and just surviving, just, trying to find my place in this world. The one constant in my life is I was always in the gym. I was always working out. I enjoyed working out. And I'm in the gym one day, and I used to train with this guy. And I didn't even know he was deputy chief of one of the prosecutor's offices. I didn't even know that. He worked out really hard, and I just liked him, and we just got together. He brings a guy in. Turns out this guy that he brought in is the chief of police of a local municipality. And he said, well, have you ever thought of becoming a cop? And I said, nah, my brother took tests. He was one of those guys, 20 tests. I never took, the only time I ever applied for a police department is my brother asked me, why don't you apply for the state police? This is back in 99. Now, mind you, I got some graduate degrees. And I don't even have a parking ticket. I didn't spend a single night in jail. There's no arrest record on me. The state police in 99 wouldn't even allow me to take the test because I didn't fit their criteria.
Really?
The state police, I got the letter. I actually got to find the letter, but I have it somewhere in my house. The state police was looking for a particular type of recruit, and I was not it. They lowered all their standards, associate's degree only, and it didn't work out so well for them. But, I laughed it off. I didn't care. It wasn't my dream. I always figured, because of my past and I was on the other side of the law so many times that me being a police officer wasn't a good fit. But when this guy approached me and asked me if I was ever interested in being a police officer, I was exhausted from traveling 4 weeks out of the month. I couldn't do it anymore. Everybody thinks, and I didn't have kids, I didn't have a wife. Everybody thinks that's a great lifestyle. It's not, because you realize why so many comics become addicts and alcoholics, because there's nothing to do. You're in a hotel room.
Yeah.
So you go to the bar, you do what you ever have to do. And I was exhausted. So I said, I never thought about it, but I'd be interested. So he says, okay, come in and see me. I go in and see him. He goes, here, and he just, because there's two types of departments in New Jersey. There's civil service and there's chief's tests. Chief's tests are, you got to know somebody to get in. I knew this guy I was working out with. Hands me the test. He goes, here, just take this. I want to see how you do. Well, I did very well. It was an IQ test. It was pretty simple.
Hey everyone, Matt here. Hope you guys are enjoying the podcast so far. I promise we will get right back to the action soon. But first, I want to let you guys know about something new and exciting that the 1078 Project has lined up. We have officially dropped our own line of merch. The 1078 Project has partnered with the Crafty Midwestern Mommy, a local embroidery shop whose mission is to serve fellow small and large business professionals with their embroidery and sewing needs. We're starting off with a few options to choose from for both men and women who want to support the project and get some cool merch in return. We have t-shirts, polos, and even 1078 Project hats. To get yours, head over to the website. That's www.1078project.com. Scroll to the bottom and click the merch store button. It's that easy. So to support the 1078 Project and get your own merch, go to www.1078project.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, click on the merch store button, and that's it. Again, it's 1078project.com. Let's get back to the episode. So you had just taken the tests.
And I did very, very well in the test. I'm going to downplay any intelligence that you may think I have. It's an IQ test. So unless you're licking windows, I think you're going to be all right. So I get on and I go to the academy. My official hire date was like June 23rd, 2001. I go to the academy August 1st, 2001.
Is it a state-run academy or is it a private-run academy?
It's a county academy.
Okay.
And I'm in there. We probably had 30, 40 people in our class. And then one day in September 2001, we're sitting there right after PT. Captain comes in and says, hey, plane just hit the World Trade Center. And our proximity to New York, I can see on most days, I can see the World Trade Center buildings.
Really?
Yeah. And the funny thing was a year before I went to a dinner. They used to have a restaurant on the top floor called Windows of the World. I was at dinner there, and above there's a bar. I was up in there, and then we stayed in the Millennium Hilton right in the square, which was, they call it World Trade Center 7, I think it was. Those buildings are no longer there. So when he came in and told us the first plane hit, wasn't that big of a deal, because people who don't live in this area don't understand that planes hit those buildings all the time. Not now because it's a no-fly zone, but Cessnas used to fly into building constantly. I don't know if you remember Corey Liddell from the Yankees. He flew his Cessna right into one of the buildings. He's gone. So it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't that big of an alarm. But I remember I'm sitting next to this female transit officer, and her father worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. That name's going to be important to you in a moment. So I see a look of concern on her face. Her father works there. She's concerned for her father's safety. We still don't really think anything of it. Instruction block starts going on. And the captain, so this captain, to paint the picture properly, if he was cast in the TV show Hill Street Blues, it would have been perfect because he had the mustache. He had the grape smuggler PT shorts on, socks up to the knee. He was definitely a product of the 70s as a cop. But he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Me and my buddy used to call him the Grapes because you could see him. You could always see his stuff. So he comes in about 20 minutes later and said, the second plane just hit the World Trade Center. Now, all of a sudden, the mood in the room changes. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? Now, mind you, when I got hired at it was a little small suburban town, my first question was, because I wasn't bred to be a cop, my first question was, you ever lost anybody in the line of duty? This question was a very emphatic no. We're in Roseland, New Jersey. It's a safe town. It's a small town. That's really not a concern. The problem is we're 10 minutes away from Newark, New Jersey, which is a crime hub.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now everybody's sort of scrambling around. Instruction stops. The girl next to me, whose father works at Cantor Fitzgerald, is really concerned. And for people who don't know, that one of those planes went into the building of Cantor Fitzgerald. I think they lost like 98% of their workforce that worked in the World Trade Center. And the people they didn't lose were late or traveling or in other meetings.
Wow.
And my buddy, guy I played college football with, worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. He's no longer with us. So we all knew people that died in the towers because, again, they all lived in New Jersey. They didn't live in New York. So now we get recalled to our department, and the atmosphere in police work just totally changed. You know, we went through, and I don't think we realized it at the time. You know, there was the 93 World Trade Center bombing, which was sort of minor. Mm-hmm. I think like 5 people or 7 people died. It wasn't that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever thought that the towers were going to come down the way that they did. So we get recalled to our department. The route I have to take to my department takes me right past this place called Eagle Rock Reservation. And there's this beautiful view of the New York City skyline and the World Trade Centers. I have to go by there anyway, and the traffic is so congested because everybody sort of doesn't know what's happening. I think by this time, a plane hit the Pentagon, and then they were tracking the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. I stop by and I see this, and I see these towers, and if you never had the opportunity to stand at the base of the World Trade Center and look up, you're like, oh my God, like this is horrible. Like these, but again, never thinking that they would fall.
Yeah.
I get back to my department, and this old grizzled lieutenant, the chief says, go get him his gun. I hadn't qualified yet. I go up to the armory. He hands me my Smith & Wesson SW40 is what we were carrying. They're Glock knockoffs. Okay. And he hands me the gun. He says, don't shoot anybody, kid. Gun goes in the holster, and that's it. Think about that. That'll give you a window into the chaos that was going on at that time. So
what happened with did you have to go back to the academy and finish off, or were you just like, hey, you're a cop now, do your thing?
At this time, when I'm back in the department, we had no idea what was going on. We didn't know whether we were at war. Like, we didn't know what extent this attack was going to continue. It's still going on. You know, all of a sudden, the plane goes down in Pennsylvania, the Flight 93.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's coming next. So we had a couple high value targets in our town. One of them was a company called ADP, which controls like 75% of the world's paychecks at the time. So we were posted, and as a recruit, I'm still a recruit. You know, thank God I have a blue uniform on, and they didn't give me one of those ugly baby shit brown ones. And so I'm standing post, and I remember there's people coming up to me, and they're going, do you know anything? Do you know, like, my cousin works in the World Trade Center. I can't get him. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, sorry, like, we didn't have any information either. But I realized something that day, that no matter what's going on in the world, people are going to look to police for answers. Answers even they don't have. Nobody had an answer that day. And so my mindset changed on what police work was. I thought, it's going to be crossing old ladies, occasional traffic stop, maybe some burglaries, whatever it is. But we do get recalled back to the academy. I think 2 days later we went back to the academy, and the air was very ominous. Everybody where in the beginning of the academy, you don't take it very serious. You take it serious, but you still have your fun. It's like sleepaway camp. You do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But then you build those bonds with other recruits. It was it was different. It was so
How
different.
old were you then?
I was 20.
About how old were you when you did
26.
Okay.
26, 27, somewhere around there. I got home when I was 26, so I just about to turn 27.
Okay. Man, I went to the World Trade Centers. We went to National Dog Trials in New Jersey, and some New York City guys took us over to the museums, and that's the only major thing that's ever happened on U.S. territory since I've been alive. And it was the most eerie experience I've ever had. It was one of those museums that, out of respect for the severity of everything that happened, it was dead quiet. Nobody said a word. You could hear a pin drop in that place. And it was just so emotional. The air was just so thick. You get to walk up the stairs that people used. I think they call it the stairway to heaven or something like that. But the stairs that everybody used to get out in the museum now. Dude, it was insane. It puts a whole new spin on, for me, going there and seeing it changed the way that I viewed that entire situation.
I haven't been. I went back about a year after the attacks, and I haven't been back since. So I went back,
man,
and all the debris was gone, and there's this big giant hole that's in the ground. I want to try. I'm with my wife at the time. Well, she was my girlfriend at the time, but soon to be my wife. I'm with her, and I'm with two other friends, and I just asked one of the New York City cops who's watching the perimeter. I say, hey, listen, I just want to get a look at the hole. I haven't been back here since. And he turns out he's from New Jersey. So he's from right next door, and I'm in the academy with some of the people that he knows. So he's like, hang on a second. Calls a Port Authority officer over there. Port Authority officer puts us in his car, and we drive down in the hole, the empty hole, the footprint. And we're looking up, and he's pointing things out. It's like, yeah, there's where the path station went out. Here's where it connected to the subway. And he's pointing. And I don't think I said a word when I was down there, and I was so uncomfortable I never went back. But to this day, I haven't watched any movies. I love watching documentaries, Discovery Channel, stuff like that.
Yeah, me too.
I can't watch anything on it. I'll turn it off. I want to go to the museum, but I don't want to go to the museum. And I
think they should send every high school kid to that museum, is my personal opinion.
Well, it's crazy now. The high school kids who weren't even born when that happened, they're trying to say there's a big movement now to say bin Laden was right and the U.S. was wrong. And
I know. I've seen that letter, his letter to America or whatever.
Yeah, crazy. You have no idea. I have an event coming up. I'm speaking at the Counterterrorism Symposium, which is really close to there in New York, and in April. And my hesitation, my trepidation is not about speaking in front of 1,000 people. I don't care about that. It doesn't bother me. My trepidation is going that close to ground zero. I don't know how I'm going to react. I'd love to go and see my friend's name on the memorial. I'd love it. Get a little etching of it. But it's going to affect me. So you brought up something that was pretty interesting. It's the only attack on U.S. soil that you were alive for. Well, I was listless, right? I didn't know where we went from here as a country. Even though, listen, after 9/11, our country was never so united, and that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It took tragedy, it took suffering in order to bring that out of us. And unfortunately, to get back there, I think it's going to take something else. It's going to take another tragedy, but hopefully not. So I called my uncle. So all my grandfather's brothers, they fought in World War II. My grandfather was a remarkably awesome guy. But my uncle Duke, my Uncle George, but everybody call him Duke, he was prisoner of war in Germany for 27 months. He enlisted right after Pearl Harbor. He was still alive at the time. He died in 2005. I call him up and I'm like, Uncle Duke, I go see him and I sit down with him. I say, I really don't know where we go from here. And he gave me such wise words that kind of realigned me and set me back on the path. He goes, I've been through something like this before. You cannot be afraid, because if you're afraid, they have already won. So I take those words to heart. I think about them often. I talk about it with my kids today. And people don't realize this is a man who spent all that time in Germany as a prisoner of war, has probably the worst post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic stress has been going on since the beginning of time.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember growing up and hearing, Duke's just a drunk. Duke. They called him Duke because he fought. So when he was in prisoner of war camp, he looked just like Henry Kissinger. I'm telling you, he looked just like Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger is Jewish. So Jewish people didn't have a good time in Germany at that time. And so he used to write, he used to tell me he used to write Irish on his helmet. So he would tell me stories when I was a little kid about prisoner of war camp. I used to have to get him drunk, which wasn't that difficult to do. You just put something near him and he would drink it. They ate cat. He goes, he was out doing a potato picking detail because they would pick potatoes, they'd peel them, and the prisoners would get the peels. Well, two guys went off to the side to take a leak, and the guards shot them, thinking they were trying to escape. Then they put the two bodies in a latrine, and this was in Stalag 2B. They put the bodies in a latrine as like a warning. Don't escape or this is going to happen to you. But he tried to escape 5 times and got caught every time. So when he gets home, he's got this really horrible post-traumatic stress that's being undiagnosed. They call it battle fatigue or something back then. And
shell shock.
Yeah, shell shock I think is like World War I.
Okay.
This man re-enlists for Korea, which, damn, I think you've done your duty for king and country. But growing up, he was never married, fought all the time, drank like a fish. What's that sound like? You know?
Sounds like every cop I know.
Yeah. And this is a man, and he to me he was a prince of a man, but I've also seen him go into bars and fight 5 guys. I've seen it with my own eyes, and as an old man, and then all the brothers were like, my Uncle Bobby, he used to go into Polish. He lived in Brooklyn, in the Polish section, married a Polish girl. He used to go into Polish bars and tell Polish jokes until he got into a fight because that's what he wanted to do. But that's them. So I'll never forget that I was speaking with somebody in my family after my shooting, which I guess we'll get there. After my shooting,
we'll get there when we get there.
And they said something about my Uncle Duke. He was such a drunk, and I remember, and this was very close after my shooting. I remember turning around, giving that death stare. I said, "Don't you ever fucking call him a drunk again. That man survived things that you can't possibly imagine. And he had to pay the price for the rest of his life. And you're going to sit there. You don't have that fucking right to call him a drunk ever."
Yeah.
Because only a person who's seen those things and gone through something similar and feels those effects can have any type of sympathy for what they're going through.
Yeah.
So, we graduate the police academy, and, the first day out on the road of this nice small town, what do you get? You get a DOA. You see the worst. You see people at the end of their life. You see the worst in humanity. Yeah. The second day, there was a robbery at gunpoint out of one of the stores. We catch him, me and my FTO, my field training officer. We catch him up on the highway. And this is back in the day when glove boxes could magically open. It's amazing how many just popped open. They fell open. It was, you did the Jedi thing. And glove box pops open and there's a gun there. And you start learning really quick the seriousness of the job and the enormous responsibility that you have. And you got to remember too, this is after Rodney King. So you kind of knew there were cameras out there. They were a lot less than they are now. But you had to be a little careful on what you did. And it's just it's death, accident, robbery, murder, just man's inhumanity to man. And you become,
Yeah. How big was the city that you worked
it
in?
was only 3.5 square miles. But we had major conduits into all the bad areas of the eastern part of New Jersey. And I always tell people, like, one of the most offensive things somebody could say to me, is you work in Roseland. What could happen there? And I said, jerk off. What's there left to steal in the inner city? Right? There's nothing left to steal there.
Yeah, we deal with a lot of the department that I work at. We deal with a lot of the St. Louis City gangs that come out to the area that I work in to, steal cars and commit robberies and home invasions and so on and so forth. Because, it's like there's nice stuff out here. They want to take nice stuff. Everybody wants to have nice things.
And I used to kill me when people do that. I said, you really undervalue. And even before my shooting, people would undervalue the responsibility of you pull a car over with tinted windows. You can't see who's in there. You don't know if they're pointing something at you. You take away that. And the minute you get complacent and comfortable in that small town mentality is the minute something happens and you're going to get really hurt.
Yeah.
So I clap back at people when they say that. What happened in Roseland? Well, if it was such an easy job, it pays pretty good. Why didn't you take it? Or are you too big of a pussy to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember your thought process at your first? I'm guessing that robbery was like your first real hot call.
Yeah.
Do you remember your thought process of like thinking and walking yourself through as a young cop of like, what did I just get myself into? Do you remember that thought process?
I thought it was kind of cool because the cavalry came along and I saw some willingness to work together. I remember that, so it happened in another town. So their detectives came over, and I'll never forget this guy because in the other town was in another county, which was a little bit tougher on crime than I worked in Essex County. This was Morris County. It was a little bit tougher on crime at that time. And I remember the detective looking at this guy. He goes, "You did this in Morris County, motherfucker. You're going away for a long time." And I was looking at that. I'm like, you know what? That's really cool. That's really cool. He wasn't being abusive to the guy, but the guy did something that was really crappy. So,
Yeah.
he was sort of giving it back. I enjoyed it. But my favorite calls are the ones where the calls for service. It costs nothing to be nice to people. This is a mistake a lot of cops will make is they'll become so calloused by things that they see. How do you know when somebody's lying to you? Their lips are moving, that type of stuff, because you do get lied to every single day. You have to separate yourself from that. And when people truly call for service, you have to show that compassion. There's nothing better in this world than the feeling of being a helping professional. There is no drug, there is no liquor bottle. When you're able to go to a call for service and really make an impact on them. There's one of them that stands out. Like I talk about it a lot because it still impacts me to this day. There was a woman and she was suicidal. She had her young son sitting next to her. She's on a bed. We come up there. I think her mother, who was living with her at the time, called us, and we go up there. She won't let us near. She's got a knife. She won't let us near the kid. She won't let us near her. She's a little bit standoffish, not really combative, but it's at the time I think it was the 21-foot rule, and then it became the 28-foot rule, and then the 30-foot rule. You're not supposed to go near somebody like that. So whatever in me saw something in this woman. She was hurting. She was really hurting, and her son's next to her, and I'm actually kind of worried about the son. I don't want her to hurt the son and then hurt herself. So I just sat down on the bed, and I became a human being. But I got my uniform on. And this was the days before those ugly BDUs that they make you all wear. This was the Albeco, polyester, everything's pressed, collar brass, all that stuff. And, to a little kid, they're going to look at you and it's command presence and they're going to say, wow, look at that. Look at all that stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, the kid's sort of shying away from me in the beginning. And as I'm talking to her, you see the kid just start pointing stuff on my belt and looking around and looking at my badge and looking at this. And you see the kid start moving closer and closer and closer. The ultimate result of that is we're able to get the woman out of there. We're able to get her some help. Well, fast forward 10 years, I'm in a supermarket. I'm in civilian clothes. And I hear a call out in the back. And I hear, Officer Kevin. I turn around and I go, he goes, is your name Kevin? I go, yeah. He goes, well, I'm Mason. You helped my mom. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Because that's what police work's about. It's about making an impact in people's lives, changing things.
Yet you mentioned earlier that you always struggled to try and find that identity. You know, like you were always trying to fill that void and trying to identify what you were called to do and what you thought you were supposed to be doing. For me, it was moments like that. Obviously, I haven't had that exact moment, but I've had similar moments. But it was moments like that where I felt like, okay, man, this is who I'm supposed to be. You know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with myself. Like this is what God put me here in this position for a reason.
Because you're making a difference. You're making a difference. You know, if you're in this world to take, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Because, so I heard this, I read this book. It was The 5 Ways to Wealth. And, I can't even remember what the first 4 were. I really don't. You know, it was investment strategies and stuff like this. I was a young kid. But I'll never forget the 5th one. The 5th one was, now give some of it away. And he said that somebody raised their hand and like, well, you're teaching us how to accumulate wealth. Why would we give it away? And he goes, like, what does it do? And he goes, I don't know. It just works. It just works.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. So, you know, you can't keep anything. You have to give it away. It returns in different forms. Mm-hmm. It has a weird way of coming back to you in some karmic way.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, time moves on. Listen, I was in accident investigation. So that was my love. Like I really love doing accident investigation because there's a lot of math involved. It's a puzzle that you have all the pieces sitting right there. You have 90% of the pieces in front of you. You just have to rearrange them in a certain way in order to figure it out.
Thank goodness for you smart guys.
I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. I even enjoyed going, because you have to follow the body as a chain of evidence. I even enjoyed going to the autopsies. There were several of them. You know, I've had bifurcated people. I've had just looks like charred beef jerky in the car. You really see some ugly stuff. But the autopsies were fascinating to me because, again, I was a gym guy. So I've read about muscles. I've read about body fat. But I can never tell you what one looks like out in the open until they cut in there. And now, listen, you think cops got a bad sense of humor?
Those people are
twisted. Holy shit, are they twisted? They will say shit.
They kind of freak me out a little bit.
But I identify with them. Because the first autopsy I ever went to was a 43-year-old man, and he's sitting on a table and he's like this. Right? He had a heart attack, I think. So I go in there, and I was that guy that was able to eat while they're cutting him open. I would do it purposely too, because it would make certain people gag. The doc, he starts with the Y incision, and so they put the Y incision here to open up the rib cage. And I was like, Doc, stop. I already know what he died of. I'm like, what do you mean you already know what he died of? I said he died of smallpox. Yeah. And he thought that was the funniest fucking thing he had ever heard in his life. So me and him got along really, really well. But that's the type of humor that they have to. They have to make that that body there a science experiment and take away all forms of humanity in order to do what they do. They're doing an investigative process in order to figure out exactly what killed them. But it's fascinating.
I've seen cops use humor. Man, humor has been... I truly think, you know, you hear it a lot, but we go on terrible calls, and what do? We walk outside and we start joking around. We make jokes to each other. Probably some things that we shouldn't be joking about, but that's how you get through, you know? That's how you deal with it. Cops use that humor in order to be able to go to the next call. You know, and kind of leave it behind.
Worst joke I ever had in my life was a fatal motor vehicle accident. Old man into a tree, massive medical event. But you're probably too young to remember this. But in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, cars, the seatbelt laws came in the 80s. And cars had these automatic seatbelts to get people to wear their seatbelts. The problem was...
like a Saturn Ion.
Yeah, so this was an Acura. It was like a 90 Acura, a 91 Acura. The problem with those, and the reason they did away with them, is because nobody ever put the lap belt on. Because you had to manually do that. So this guy hits a tree, license plate first, The woman, I'm the first officer on scene. I'm working that day. As a matter of fact, I had to drop my lieutenant off at his house so he could take a shit. And I just left him there and went right down. It was right down the road. So I go over there, and here she is. She's, face on the side of the dashboard, no airbags. He's in a spot like this. And another officer who's a little bit more squeamish than I am, he's standing there and he's trying to do the, I always try to think he's doing the Will Smith, there's a scene in every Bad Boys where it's the smell and fart scene where the camera sort of pans up and they sort of, in every Michael Bay movie you'll see all that scene in every single one of them. So he's standing there and he's trying to reflect on. He's like, "Oh, I wonder what was the last thing to go through her mind." I'm like, "I know." He goes, "How the hell you know?" And I said, "It was the fucking dashboard. Dashboard went right through her mind." But again, that's how we get through all that stuff, and it's an important role to play. Because again, we're trying to detach ourselves from the humanity of the situation and the horror of the situation. You can't always do it though.
Yeah.
And building up that thick callus on your skin over time, it just weighs on you until you don't care about anything.
For me, it was when the times that the humor and stuff stopped working was you get married, you start having kids, you start going on calls that involve kids. And it's like, man, there's no joke that's gonna make this one edible. You know what I mean? Those are that was for me at least. It's when I started to age and mature as a man and also as a policeman and mature in my faith and bringing kids in the world. It's like as soon as I had kids, it kind of changed the way I viewed a lot of things.
I used to be able to kill deer. Like, I don't like killing animals. Don't get me wrong. I really don't like killing animals. But a deer that was suffering, I used to be able to do it with no problem whatsoever. Until I tried to slit one's throat because they took out our shotguns in the cars because somebody left one loaded in there. And I'll never do that again. But, and my kids have built up my humanity also. But when I got a dog, before I had kids, when I got a dog, I couldn't do it no more. It was crazy. It was like a light switch, because I had to dehumanize that. Deer aren't human, but I had to take out all sorts of emotion,
detach yourself from it,
and just do it. But over time, that's the life of a police officer. You go home, and your wife will sit there and ask you, how was your day? Well, the baby, the color of the baby was blue. The one that got locked in the toy box and suffocated to death. Or, hey, this woman died on the toilet and she took a dump that was about this long. Is that what you want to hear? No, you can't say that to your spouse. You guys got to say, oh, it was all right. Yeah. It was a day. There wasn't much to it. Yeah. So that brings, and that's how my life was. Just going in, doing the job, doing the best I can, trying to be a good, my wife gives birth to 2 children. And it changes your perspective, because once you have children, you're a lot less reckless. When I used to go into car chases before I had kids, getting a Crown Vic up to 120 miles an hour, calling out 70 miles an hour, you might top out at 130 and the car's shimmying. You think back on that and you say, you know what, if I would have hit a pothole, I'm done. I'm done. You're calling out, traffic's light, 70 miles an hour, we're good. I'm going to continue. And then, the problem is the most serious calls always come from the quietest nights. The worst thing you can ever say is, God, I wish something would happen. Well, guess what I did on July 10th, 2013? Pull up next to my partner with a cup of coffee. It's a Wednesday night. We work what's called the Pittman schedule, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We sort of put the town to bed. Pull up next to him. We're drinking our coffee. I'm like, just anything, like an alarm call, something. It's about 10 o'clock at night. And I'm praying for it. I just want to get out of the car. That's all I want to do. Walk around, do something. So we used to have to do these plaza checks, like these little strip mall checks. Just tug on doors, make sure everything's locked up. And we used to have to do them multiple times throughout the night. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go do my plaza checks. And I was due to we had officers sitting at the desk. I was due to take over the desk at like 11. So I said, do this, and then I'm going to go in and take my desk time. So I pull into the lot, and over the radio, that crack of the radio changes everything for you. We hear, start heading to this address. It was a well-known address because there had been ongoing domestic issues. There was a TRO, that was a temporary restraining order, that was filed a couple days prior that hadn't been delivered to the actor or the one of the defendant, or however you want to classify him. We knew it, but we're trying to get information. And he goes, it's an open 911 call. In New Jersey, I don't know if it's the same way out there, you're going 911 no matter what. Yep. Whether it's a misdial, open line, mistake, whatever it is, you're going.
Yes. Yeah,
so here. Open 911 call, we start heading that way. I'm the lead car, and I'm flying. Like, I'm doing probably 70 to 80 miles an hour, just trying to get there. No sirens, lights though. It's like 10:45 at night, so there's no traffic on the road, and we pull into a townhouse complex, and like an idiot, because I'm not thinking clearly. I'm going back and forth with my partner. He's right behind me, and we're trying to make a plan. We're like, okay, let's see what this is. If we have to, we kind of know where it is. You may have to go around back, blah, blah, blah. We go up to the front door, and we can hear yelling inside. So we give that pound on the door, right? We give the pound, and all you hear is yelling on the other side, say, don't come in here, don't come in here. So, okay, we pull back a little bit, real quick, makeshift plan. We're going to breach the door. We're going to get in there. One of the guys is going to go around back, and because it's a townhouse, so there's only the back slider, the front door, and the garage. It's their only egresses. So I go get the Halligan bar, the crowbar, and they're like, why didn't you kick in the door? Well, it's because it's not a wood door. It's a steel door. You're not kicking anything in with a deadbolt. So I go, and on a signal, I start whacking the front door by the locks, trying to get a little foothold to get the crowbar in there and pop it. Mm-hmm. About 2 whacks in, it's pop, 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 pop. That, it's gunfire. So you drop the bar, and we're on this little front porch. You try to get below the window. What had happened was when my partner went around back, this guy heard us doing it, was raising his gun towards the door, and if we would have entered in, we were done. When he realized that stuff was about to end for him, he moves it to his girlfriend, or his ex-girlfriend at the time, who's sitting on the floor, and he's going to kill her. My partner exchanges gunfire with him. And so we sort of pull back. Other cars are starting to arrive. They're watching the front. My car's parked right in the front. And I go around back. I find out my partner's okay. I'm yelling over the radio, shots fired, start sending everybody. I go around the back, and there's 4 of us. There's a lieutenant, a sergeant, and myself, and another patrolman. We get together. There's a sliding glass door. Our plan is breach the sliding glass door, go preserve life. That's our job. Without thinking about it, we walk up these stairs, and it's got the wood slats. I go all the way over to the right. The stairs are on the left. I go all the way over to the right, and because to me, tactically, that was a sound position. I could see everything. I could see the victim. The victim was seated on the ground with her knees to her chest. I could see her sitting over there. I can't see the guy, the actor. But I know she's not looking at us. We're not quiet going in there. She's not looking at us. She's sort of looking over to the right a little bit. My partner, the plan was, my partner's going to throw a chair through one of the patio chairs through the sliding glass door, let the glass shatter. We're going in. As soon as he throws that thing through the door, I see this giant flash. I feel heat. I feel gunpowder. When you're at the range and you feel a little blowback? I can feel the little grains hitting my face. I feel my left ear just, This guy just shot at me. He was right behind the wall. We couldn't see him.
Really?
The 2 officers who were on the left. Now, there was a lieutenant off the deck. He took off. He left us all for dead. I'll never forgive that guy in my life. And he was Mr. Military. He was Mr. Gun. He used to say hoorah all the time. And I used to say, shut the fuck up. You're not a Marine, first of all. He wasn't a Marine. Stop saying hoorah. He ran and left me for dead. The other two officers retreated off of the deck because they should have, but never left the area. Now, I fall to the ground. I hit the ground real hard. And time just slows down. I am so lucid. Yeah. I am so calm. There is not an ounce of panic in me. My keys, which were on my antenna ring, or my antenna, the ring was, they fell off. I pick them up, put them on. I realize what's going on. I have full clarity of thought. I know exactly what just happened. This guy fired at police officers twice now. I'm looking down. I see a ton of blood. The other officers are yelling behind me, "Are you shot? Are you shot?" And I say, I don't know. I just know there's a lot of blood. My shoulder hurts. Now I know if I crawl out, I'm going to go straight through the danger zone, and he's going to be able to shoot me. And I'm 6'4". I'm 235 pounds. I'm not that spry, so I'm stuck, and I'm in full police gear. So, I make this decision. Well, you know what? This is it, Kevin. You're about to get into a really bad gun battle, and this could be. I kind of make my peace with God. I think about my wife. She's going to get that phone call. I think about my two children. My son Patrick was about 3.5, and my son Jimmy was 7 or 8 months. They're going to grow up without a father. Patrick will remember me. Jimmy's going to have no idea who I am. And I said, okay, this is it. I get in a prone shooting position, and I get into a firing position. The next thing I know, and it seemed like forever. It seemed like, 10 minutes, but in reality, it was probably like a minute. Next thing I know,
dude, I've been there.
Yeah, I feel this tugging on the back of my police belt. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? It's one of the other officers who retreated off the deck but never left. He's grabbing me and assisting me while the other officer's holding cover and gets me off the deck. And we're standing there, and we can still see the victim. Now, the actor ran upstairs because apparently he got shot in the first volley. He got shot in the small of the back. So he retreats upstairs like a ghost. This woman stands up and just hugs the wall out the garage. So all of a sudden we go over to radio and say, hey, listen, victim's coming out. Do not shoot. She's good. They get her out. They get her to safety. Now, I don't care what happens. He can stay in there for 10 years. It doesn't matter. We did our job, and it was a good job. But here's the problem. It's July. So the blood that I saw, I was not shot. Once I got off, you do one of these. You're like, no, I'm good. The blood was, when we threw the chair through, all the glass shattered all over the deck, and I went down on my forearms, and all the glass became embedded in my arms. So there's a lot of blood. Now it's July. It's hot as hell. We have to stand post because I'm fully expecting this guy to come running out the back and do a suicide by cop. And my arms are stinging. We had to wait for the state police teams unit, which is their version of SWAT. They had to come in. Once they came in, and you don't even have time to decompress. You're kind of like, holy shit, what the hell just happened? This is crazy. Once they came in, I'm able to get around to the side of the house. We're free and clear of the situation. Big problem. I got a wife sitting at home, 2 small children. I was just in a shooting. I can't call her because at the time, I didn't carry my cell phone with me. My cell phone's in the car. It's right on my duty bag. I know exactly where it is. I'm like, mother. I get ordered to go to the hospital. I have to get a bunch of glass removed from my arm. But I was able to grab one of the EMT's phones. And my wife's number is obviously one that I knew off the top of my head. I call her. It's like 12:30 at night. And maybe a little later. So put this in your mind where your other at home gets a call from an unknown number, 12:30 at night, knowing that their spouse is working. the things my wife went through. It's just crazy. She picks up the phone, and I said, look, hon, I was in a shooting. I'm okay. I'm not shot. I have to go to the hospital. I have to get glass removed from my arm. I'll be home as soon as I can. I go to the hospital. Glass gets without incident. There's nothing going on. I get the glass removed from my arm. I didn't want to go, but I was forced to go. I was ordered to go, and I go right back to the scene when I get released.
Really?
Yeah. As I get back to the scene, is just about when they're talking him out. They arrest him. Job's over. So now I got to go back in. They're asking for reports. I write reports. I get out of there by about like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I go home. First time
And that was immediate. They had you write reports.
Yeah.
Like right afterwards.
Yeah, the administration's a little dirty like that. I was
Really?
Because I didn't fire. There was no danger for me. But the guy who fired, I had to tell him. I was like, no, you don't look good. Go to the hospital. I had to tell him that. He's like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, go to the fucking hospital now. Get some medication, and you do not write any reports. I'm telling you, I was the union rep for my department at the time. I was like, I'm telling you as your union rep, you don't look good. You need to go to the hospital. But yeah, they'll try to get him out of you. They always do. They always do.
The good thing is our department now is in most departments around this area. I think it's in our policy that they have to allow you at least three sleep cycles before you're interviewed or you write a statement or anything like that after being involved in an officer-involved shooting or a critical incident that results in like death or serious injury like that.
That's a good policy. I like that policy a lot. It should be that way.
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies that your brain's still putting a lot of pieces of that puzzle back together. And you do that. Your brain heals when you sleep. And you kind of put that puzzle together when you sleep. And
if you sleep, that's the big problem.
Yeah, if you sleep.
Yeah. So I get home at 5 o'clock, and I'm amped up. My adrenaline is just the adrenaline dump is crazy when something like this happens. I hug my wife. I know my wife wants to ask me what happened, but she's very hesitant to do it. Of course, I hug my kids. I'm overly grateful that I'm home, and and I'm proud of the job that was just done. I was so amped up, I actually went for a run. Just clear my head, go for a run. It was a great run. I'm telling you, I had one of the best runs of my life. I go home and I try to get some sleep, and I'm in and out of sleep. I can't really rest. I think I get maybe an hour. I wake up at around 11 o'clock. And, of course, because we're cops, everybody wants to know what's going on, especially people who weren't there. I wake up to like 50 phone calls, and I try to get back to some of them. I check on the guys who were there, making sure they're okay. And, thankfully everybody was good. And that was it. So my wife finally finds out exactly what happened. And, I guess the spouses always think that there's something that could happen, but it's a very abstract dream that's not real. Well, now it's real, and they don't know what to do. They're scared to death. They didn't sign up for this. We did. So we go out to dinner and a movie just to, we get a babysitter for the kids, go out to a dinner and a movie, and try to decompress a little bit. Well, we sit in a movie theater and we go to see a movie called This Is the End by Seth Rogen. And anybody who's ever watched that movie, in the beginning scene, in one of the beginning scenes, it's this big loud bang with a big flash, and certain people go up to heaven and certain people stay on earth. And that loud bang and that flash sent me into the biggest panic attack I ever felt in my life. I had no clue what the hell this was. So I start sweating. I can't breathe. I feel like there's a big giant weight on my chest. My wife had been through enough, so I can't really tell her what's happening. I get up and I got to go to the bathroom. My stomach's hurt. So I go out, and as soon as I go out, the hallway's empty, and I'm in full panic mode. I'm breathing like I just ran a marathon and or a sprint. I can't stop sweating, and I'm shaking. I go, every time I tried to re-enter the theaters, my wife's in there. I try to re-enter the theater. I can't. It's like the door is a giant lead weight. I can't do it. I'm out there for like 15 minutes. Finally, my wife comes out and she says, "You okay?" And I said, "Hey, you know what? My stomach hurting a little bit. Go back in. I'll be in a minute." Fully expecting this to pass. Well, she took some mercy on me because I think she knew what was going on. And she says, "Nah, you know what? This movie sucks. Let's get the hell out of here." So we go home. And I'm quiet. I lay down, and that night the nightmare started. It was, you wake up, you're drenched in sweat so bad that you check to see if you pissed yourself. And subsequently, every night after that was just a night terror. I would thrash in my sleep, according to her. I got up one night, tried to handcuff her. And this is real close after the incident. The department fell short because you're supposed to have a critical incident stress management debriefing within 48 hours. That's what they recommend. My department didn't plan one until the following Monday. So this is a Wednesday. The event happened on a Wednesday. The movie was a Thursday. Now they want to have one on Monday. Like, all right, whatever. So we decided to take the kids down to see my parents and my brother. And, I'm driving down there. I'm very introspective when I drive down there. I'm not really talking too much because I can't something's cracked and I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get control of this. So we get down there, and my brother, who was also a cop, is asking me a bunch of questions, and I'm just putting my hand up going, no, like, not now. I don't really say a whole lot. As we go to leave, put the kids in the car, my 3-year-old spills chocolate milk all over his car seat. He's a 3-year-old. I start screaming and yelling at my 3-year-old as if he just killed the family dog. Like, I am so mad at him. I lose control. I lose everything. My wife has no clue what's going on. She steps in front. Now, all of a sudden, she's taking the brunt of everything. I am screaming. I am yelling. I don't give a shit who's listening. It's just snap. I'm like, get in the car. We get in the car. I start driving home. The whole ride home, yelling. It's like compounding. I can't stop. I'm like, every little thing is just annoying the shit out of me, and I'm just going off. Halfway up, because I lived about 2 hours away. So it's on a 2-hour drive on the Garden State Parkway, which is a major, major highway. It's like 4 or 5 lanes at some places. People are going 70, 80 miles an hour. My wife is begging me to pull the car over to the side of the road. My wife would rather have herself and 2 small children on the side of a major highway than sit in a car with me. That's how bad it got. At one point, she climbs in the back seat with the car just to get away from me. So I get home. We finally make it home. And I know something's wrong. Something's seriously wrong. And it presented so fast. I call a hotline because I'm like, I gotta get some help. I don't know where to turn. So I call this hotline, and they hook me up with a therapist and who deals with only cops. Guy's name's Dr. Eugene Stefanelli, but I don't get to see him until like the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I can't remember. So now that night, I remove myself from the bedroom. I go to sleep downstairs. I can no longer, in good conscience, sit in the bedroom with my wife and have her experience me do this. Monday comes. I have to go to a doctor because there was still some glass left in my arm, and they had to remove the rest of it. And as I'm sitting there in the doctor's office, she's picking at my arm. She gets done. She gets out what she can get out. I think there's still some left in there. And she asked me, she says, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. It's just glass. It'll be fine." She goes, "No, that's not what I'm talking about." I said, "Are you okay?" I start bawling, crying. Big tough guy, start bawling, crying in a doctor's office, right in front of a woman. I'm like, "What the hell is wrong with you? You are such a wuss." She hugs me, which is not customary for a doctor to do. And that day, I go to the critical incident debriefing. And I'm sitting there, and I'm in street clothes. And the reason they had it Monday is because they didn't want to pay overtime, which is really sad. It's really, really sad. I'm sitting in the squad room. like a little break room. And
It's so
yeah,
frustrating, by the way.
and I remember I told you they took our shotguns out of our cars, so we didn't have that during this. I get word from a lieutenant saying, "Oh, they're going to put shotguns back in the cars." I'm like, "That's great. That's awesome. So maybe, out of the ashes can come some beauty." And then I find out they're only going in supervisors' cars. Once again, crazy Kevin comes out. I start yelling at my lieutenant. You need to tell my wife that only you get the protection. You need to tell my wife you look over my dead body because you got a shotgun. You son of a bitch, motherfucker. I'm calling a lieutenant. I'm a patrolman. I'm calling a lieutenant every name in the book. The other officers pick me up and walk me downstairs because I was about to get fired.
Yeah.
So I go downstairs. I leave. And my life takes a really bad turn. Like it's just going downhill and downhill. I can't stop the night terrors. I can't associate. I stopped talking to everybody because there are people who reached out, but I didn't know what to say and I don't want to talk to anybody. And then there's people who never reached out. But, looking back so far removed from it, just in the same way I didn't want to talk to anybody because I didn't know what to say, those people who didn't reach out, who I used to hold that against them, I don't hold it against them anymore because they didn't know what to say. But that only comes with a little bit of time. So now the drinking starts because drinking gives me a little bit of peace. I'm sleeping downstairs. I'm hardly sleeping at all. When I do sleep, I mean, literally, I may sleep 2-3 hours a night. Get up, start drinking, and so I go to the doctors and they prescribe you. The protocol at the time was an anti-anxiety and antidepressant. So now I'm on what was I taking? Lexapro and I got Klonopin. Well, I find out if you take some Klonopin and you drink, you get drunk really quick. It's extraordinarily dangerous. But alcohol is expensive. So I was like, cool. Of course, they're not letting me back to work. There's a picture that I just saw today. So about a month after my shooting, we went down to Atlantic City to go see a show. I had a friend who was a comedian who was performing down there. And he's so nice, gets me backstage, trying to lift my spirits a little bit. And there's a picture of my wife and I, and I wish I could send it to you to show you because it's scary looking. I don't look. There's something wrong. We get back from there, and we had a rotten time. I was just not in a position to do it. I should never have went.
Yeah.
So one night when I'm sitting downstairs, I can't. I'm seeing my life unravel, and I don't know what's going on. I'm in such chaos mode. I'm starting to have suicidal fantasies, suicidal ideations. How am I going to do it? Well, I still have my off-duty gun, my service weapons in headquarters. My off-duty weapon, I carried on my ankle, a 38 Chief Special. Beautiful. I mean, I love that gun. Great wheel gun. Loaded up with hollow points. And I said, you know what? I can't do this no more. I'm downstairs. We lived on a bi-level at the time. I go into my office, pull the gun out, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, all right, this is it. This is time. Pen a note, say I'm sorry to everybody. Bank codes, passwords, all this stuff is there. I don't want to hurt. This is not about them. I don't want to hurt. It's like 2 a.m. and I'm drunk, and I'm on medication, and I'm not thinking clearly. Not to say that suicide ever is a reason to you ever think clearly when that's an option. I put the gun in my mouth. Yeah. I recently qualified with it, so I could taste the gunpowder. I feel like that metal on your mouth feel. I feel that. Now the gun is 1 pound 9 ounces. The gun feels like a lead weight. I cock the hammer back, make it single action. I'm ready to go. And I got this gun in my mouth for what seems like forever. And I'm just replaying the incident. I'm looking for a reason not to do this. Please, just give me something. Give me a sign. After about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I pause. It sort of just snaps. I take the gun out of my mouth and I'm just staring at it. I'm just looking at it. And I have that little bit of clarity where I was going to shoot myself downstairs in my house. My kids are going to hear it. My kids are asleep upstairs. My wife's going to come down here with her husband and half his head missing. How like, you son of a bitch, like, what are you doing? So after that, I realized I can't have that gun in my house. One of the guys who was there that night, who was on the deck with me, I call him up. He was one of the few people I still talk to, and I said, "Look, Terry, I can't have my gun in my house." He's like, "Okay, no questions, no judgment. Put it in a lockbox. I'll meet you here. I'll take it." Takes my gun. So at least the gun's out of the house. Unfortunately, it didn't solve anything because there's many, many, many methods to kill yourself. You know, I tried to hang myself, which is a fucked up story because I had this rope that I used to attach to a dog toy, and when my dog would go out in the water, we lived by a lake, go out in the water, I'd use it to pull it back. So I'd throw it out there, and there it is sitting there. And I loop it around this hook that's in the ceiling of my garage. I put it around my neck, and sometimes I forget that I weigh a little bit. So I put it around my neck, and I'm actually doing it, you know. Well, I wake up like 3 hours later on the floor of my garage. What had happened is the hook pulled out or the rope broke, and I'm just on the ground. I knocked myself out when I hit the ground, or maybe I blacked out, but I'm alive, and now I'm pissed. You know, I'm a failure. I'm a failure at life. I'm a failure. I can't even kill myself correctly. But there was other times, and another time is I used to take handfuls of Klonopin. This time I took a little extra and washed it down with tequila was my drink. Washed it down with a little tequila, and I figured I'd just drift off to sleep. You know, it's later at night. Nobody's going to find me until the morning. They'll just think I have a heart attack. You know, there's no blood and guts. My eyes get forced open. I look around me, and there's all sorts of officers and emergency medical personnel hanging around me. My wife came down, couldn't wake me up, calls the police. Now I'm combative. So when you're doing that, you're a great liar. And I was lucid enough to know. I had such a tolerance for that stuff. I was lucid enough to know that I had to lie my way out of it. They're going to put me in a mental institution. So I said, they're like, "Sir, did you try to kill yourself?" I'm like, "Why? Why would I kill myself? What are you talking about? Only pussies kill themselves." They clear, and that was it. That was it. I was able to hold it together long enough. There was another time when I did it. Like I think I might have told my wife that one a few days later. It's like, "Yeah, I took a few Klonopin." So the second time, my wife knew I took Klonopin because she started monitoring it, and I was drinking, and she got real scared. So she called the cops again. So the cops say, "Look, here's the deal," and she had gone out or something, and I was home with the kids. So that was her way of getting me out of the house. So the cop says, "Look, it's either we're going to call DYFS, which is Child Protective Services, or you are going to the hospital." So I go to the hospital, and I go to the mental ward and waiting to get checked in, and I'm in like a triage room, I guess you would call it. And the curtains are open and the lights are on. I'm trying to get some sleep. Like I'm resigned to the fact that I'm in here. What am I going to do? So the security guard's sitting right outside the door. And now I'm pissed, I'm uncomfortable, and now I'm going to get belligerent. So I get up, shut the curtain, turn the lights off. I'm going to sleep. Well, this son of a bitch comes in, turns the lights on, opens the curtain. I'm like, "You motherfucker." You know, and I start berating this poor guy. Like, "Look at you fucking security guard. You're nothing. What's the matter? Couldn't get a police job? Now you got to work for a hospital?" One officer became 2. 2 officers became 5. 5 officers became 10. And 10 officers became 20. And I'm just berating every single one of them. I don't give a crap what they say. I'm calling them every name in the book. And these poor guys, like, I went back to that hospital afterwards to apologize to them because I laid into them. Like, you poor fellas, man. You guys didn't sign up for this. I'm sorry. I saw like 2 or 3 of them. I'm like, please pass my gratitude on to the other people. It was a tough thing. I was not in a good headspace. Doesn't excuse what I did, but that's why. But anyway, they commit me. So now I'm in a mental institution. They take your belt. First of all, they strip search you. They make sure you don't have anything. So that's real comfortable. Standing naked in front of another dude. They take your shoelaces, they take your belt, and they want you to go to sleep on a 6-foot bed. Well, I'm like 6'4", so that doesn't work real well. Uncomfortable, but I knew the more I acted out, the longer I was going to have to be in there. I was a real good actor, so I just stayed quiet. And the hospital is like 15 miles away from where I lived, so I finally get out through some help of some doctor friends of mine vouching for me, and I walk 15 miles home. It's early in the morning. I'm like, I just want to walk home. I just want to go home. And that's what I did. I walked home. But at the time, the whole time I'm seeing doctors. I'm seeing workers' comp doctors. I'm seeing my doctor. Workers' comp doctors, they're lucky they're still alive, because I had a doctor tell me, like, well, you're a cop. Didn't you expect to get shot at? It's like, no. And like the statistics for that are crazy. It's like 1% of cops get into shooting and 0.5% shoot, and it's crazy out of 650,000 cops in the United States. So I'm going to see doctors over and over again, and there comes time where my doctor, he's Dr. Stefanelli, he's this old Italian from Newark. So if you ever watched Many Saints of Newark, that's where he grew up. Like in the 50s, 60s, he's still a very dear friend of mine. So, and I have some very, I don't call, I break his chops constantly. So he comes in and he's nuts. Like, he's crazy. And he only deals with police. He comes in one day to therapy and he has a Colt 45 with the Bakelite handles. It's like a World War II model. And he has it, and it's a beautiful gun, blued. I mean, it's in perfect condition. And I've been shooting a gun since I was 5 years old. It was no big deal. And he says, "Hey, look at this gun. It's really beautiful. I think I might sell it. What do you think of it?" And he passes it to me. I'm like, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, you are absolutely out of your mind. You're handing a guy that's tried to kill himself a couple different times. You're handing him a gun. Obviously, he checked to see if it wasn't loaded. But he had to look at my reaction. And I'm trying to remain stoic and keep somewhat of my manhood. So I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, I got it up here. I never grabbed it as if it was a gun. I just sort of handled it. And I'm like, wow, it's really beautiful. That's a really great gun. Here, and he could see I started sweating. It's like, here you go, And so he tells me, going back, he goes, at that point, I knew you could never be a police officer again. I knew you were going to retire. Now I have to start working towards that. But the great thing about Dr. Stefanelli is he got me involved in group therapy, and group therapy with other officers who were involved in shootings.
Yeah, peer support.
It was the only place I started feeling somewhat normal. I could talk to them. I could drop my guard. When it started off with like it was like I was a cop again, because I was able to go in there and he has a sign-in sheet. Well, half the names on it are fake and inappropriate. And it would make us laugh. We'd break each other's chops constantly, and you get back in that rhythm, you get back in that routine. And as soon as you walk out the door, unfortunately, you're back in the real world and you can't associate with anybody because nobody understands.
What's your relationship with your wife like right now? Like, as you guys are, you said that you kind of left the house and you went to the hospital, then you walked back. Was she still there? Were the kids still there?
My wife is one of the strongest women that you'll ever meet in your life. I can't say that the word divorce hadn't come up multiple times, because it has, and it still does to some extent to this day, because like I said, by no means am I cured. So during this time, during the bad times, my wife got verbally assaulted. I called her every name in the book. I'm Irish, she's Italian. If you've ever watched The Godfather, one of the lines I stole from The Godfather is when Carlo calls Connie a guinea bitch. I've called her that. That's
two fighting cultures, 100%,
by the way. 100%. it strained our relationship to the point, because she married one guy, and now this other guy's living in the house. And it took us, so I'm 10 years removed from all this, and we're still learning how to reconnect to this day. But the worst thing I ever did to my wife, aside from the pain of trauma, my wife tells me all the time, she goes, I went to bed and I didn't know whether my husband was going to be there when I got up, because I didn't know whether he was going to kill himself. The worst thing I ever did, though, I did this several times. But I used to throw things at her and stuff. Like I broke so many remotes. Like I would just throw a remote at her. One of the remotes, goddamn. So I'm lucky I wasn't arrested. I threw the remote. It bounced off the TV and hit her right in the head. I'm like, I couldn't make that shot again if I tried. I was trying to, why she never called the police on me? Well, she did call the police on me, but not for that. She knew that was pretty serious. Like the cops knew who I was at that point. That's how bad it got. They just knew. The worst thing I ever did was I spit at her, right in her face. There was nothing more demoralizing to a human being than getting spit on, and I did it.
Yeah,
and I did it. I'm not hiding from it, and I'm certainly not proud of it, but I did it. Now you know why I think she's the strongest woman. Because my trauma that I went through, it has this ripple effect to those in your orbit.
Yeah, for sure.
It plays off of them. So she has her own issues, like from me. And that's a tough thing to bring up too, because you're the cause of somebody else's pain. Inadvertently, that wasn't my goal. I was gonna say, let me try to mess with this poor girl. And a lot of therapy. But thankfully, when we took our vows in 2007, we meant them. We meant those vows.
Yeah.
And I'm in a much better place. Me personally, my marriage took a long time to unravel, and it's taken a long time in order to get back on track. And slowly but surely, day by day, it is. I have a lot of faith when it comes to that stuff. And I work every day at it.
It's awesome.
Yeah, she's a good woman. She's a good. They don't make them like her anymore. So through group therapy, I know it's time for me to dry out. I got to stop drinking because I'm still drinking. So I check myself into rehab. Once again, I go through the strip search policy. Except this time I get to bend over and cough to make sure I'm not hiding anything in my prison wallet. And when that happened, I went into rehab very serious. I went in with 3 notebooks, 3 books, a whole workout plan that I drew, because I'd stopped working out at this time, which was a very dangerous thing. Whole workout plan, like I'm using this time, this portion of my life.
Yeah.
And I get put into a room with a guy who was arrested for heroin. And, no names. Nobody knows I'm a cop. I got a long beard at the time. My hair's grown out. This is the day after Thanksgiving, 2013. And I get put in this room, and he's like, what are you in for? And I'm like, I got a drinking problem. What are you in for? Heroin. I'm like, oh, did you get arrested? And he goes, oh, yeah, I got arrested. I was like, well, where'd you get arrested? He doesn't know I'm a cop, mind you. And he names the town that my brother works in. I'm like, I don't even need to ask the next question because I already know what the answer is going to be. I'm like, hey, you remember the officer? And he goes, I sure do. Mentions my brother's name. I'm like, son of a bitch. Son of a bitch. So I'm in a room in rehab with a guy my brother arrested. I sobered up real quick as soon as I had to bend over. I am not built for this place. I don't want this place. And I was still seeing workers' comp doctors at the time. This is the measure of a workers' comp doctor. While I'm checking myself in, I call him, I leave a message. I said, look, doc, I'm not going to be there this week. I'm checking myself into rehab. I got to get sober. They take your cell phone. You can't have that in there. But they let you check it. So the next day I check my phone, no message from him. The next day I check my phone, still no message from him. I check myself out, still no message from this doctor. This is supposed to be a caring professional. I finally get a hold of him. He's exactly what he said. I can't treat you no more. So he dropped me. I was like, you dropped me? Like, what the hell is this? Like, all right, whatever. And then I start working towards retirement. And that's exactly what I did. So on June 1st, 2014, I officially retired as a police officer, knowing in my heart that I went to work July 10th, 2013, went home, never went back. Last time. Yeah. That's a.
Well, what was it like to hang it up?
Did you ever see that scene in Field of Dreams with Charlton Heston? Not Charlton Heston.
That's my dad's favorite movie. I've watched Field of Dreams
not Charlton Heston.
times.
Burt Lancaster and Kevin Costner. He's like having a piece of you cut off. You know, that identity that I was searching for my whole life was, I put full force into being a police officer. I felt it was my calling. I felt it was my duty, and it's not there anymore. Mm-hmm. But it's such a bad thing, and police officers are so dangerous when they do that stuff, because you can never put your primary identity in something that ends. And the police job is going to end. It's going to end for you, and it ended for me. It's going to end for us all. One day you're going to show up to work, and the next day you're not, and your career is over. So that's a very, very dangerous thing. You know, you have to put your primary identity in something that is totally rock solid, steadfast, never moving. You know, it wasn't until I rediscovered my faith that I find out really where my primary identity should have been all along. It shouldn't have been in how many things I could steal, or how many kids I could beat up, or how many accolades I could get as a police officer, or it shouldn't have been in any of that. It should have been, this thing's going to love me for the rest of my life, and everything else underneath it allows me to be everything. It allows me to be a good father. One day, I'm not going to be a father anymore because I'll be off this earth. One day, I'm not going to be married anymore. You know, if I continue some of the bad behavior I do, it'll be sooner than later. So those are what I am, but it's not my primary identity. My primary identity is I try to think of myself as a mean motherfucking servant of God.
I love it, dude.
And it's a weird
love it.
reconnection to my faith. We had just started the Suffering podcast. We just started it up, and we had the opportunity to get a professional hockey player in. It's like, cool. Lives in the area. Played for the Flyers, which was my team. And I'm like, great, we're going to hear some hockey stories. We bring him in here. Well, it turns out his name's Adam Burt. Turns out he's a pastor. And he's a pastor of a church that's 5 minutes away from my house. And he wants to meet me first. And, you know, I go sit down and talk to him, and we have some coffee together, and we're just chatting. The next day, right, this is before the show was recorded, he sends me a text message. He always calls me KD. He goes, hey, KD, I'm praying for you. I get so mad. I'm like, who the fuck are you to fucking pray for me, you son of a bitch? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, who do you think? Like, I was speechless. I got so mad, so angry. And then it started working on me. And it just started working on me and working on me. And I think it was 2 weeks later we recorded him, and it changed my life. Like, it really just, it got me in my head, got my wheels working. I'm like, why would somebody who I don't know pray for me? I am not worthy of the shit that I've done. I am not worthy for one of your prayers. So we record him. It's great. You know, it's like talking to C.S. Lewis. It really is. It really is. I always try to be supportive of my guests. Even to this day, I try to be supportive. I go to his church, see what it's all about. I bring my two boys. It's a non-denominational Christian church. In the beginning, they're singing. And they have this girl, Kim, who has got one of the most angelic voices I've ever heard in my life. She starts singing, and I got tears streaming down my face. And I'm trying to hold it in because there's still that part of me. I don't want my boys to see me cry. And it was during lockdown, so I got a mask on. I just sort of moved the mask up a little bit. And I was like, wow, I get out and I'm like, wow, that was really strange. Well, I go back the next week, I try to replicate it. Sure enough, same thing happens. So 3 years later, I haven't missed a Sunday, and I've just been asked to be the deacon because that family right there has really transformed the way I live my own life. It's never once stopped me. My mission has always been, my message has always been, I don't want anybody to get into the same spot that I'm in. So,
Yeah.
I found this through group therapy. So after I retired, I stayed in group therapy and I would help people where I was. And I felt very, very drawn in order to do that because I understood when they came to you as somebody who has a little bit more experience, is a little bit further down the road, the feeling inside of me, it helped me heal. It helped me heal. So I just continued to do it. And that's what I do to this day. Like mental health advocacy is such a hot topic these days. Everybody's calling themselves a mental advocate or a mental health advocate. It really pisses me off. Not because I'm looking at it as a grab of the market. Like before I came on here, I looked at you, I saw what you were doing, and there's a big difference. So people who identify themselves as a mental health advocate, it is an ugly world, and you better be ready to get your hands dirty. So I just had an incident happen. I write for 4 different magazines. I write for Rich Man, Rich Woman, Sovereign Global, and Quantum of Light. And the reason I write for them is because I have 170 guests I have access to who have overcome adversity in some way or another. And I just got an article kicked back, and it really ticked me off that they kicked it back. Because I got a friend of mine who was, his name's Clark Fredericks. He was raped as a 12-year-old and really destroyed his life, and he ended up going back and killing the guy.
Wow.
So I read an article on him because Clark is a good friend of mine now. And they kick it back, and we can't mention, they tell me they can't mention rape. It has to be identified as a traumatic incident. And then I start thinking, so then I look back on the rest of my articles, they remove suicide. Well, if we're going to whitewash everything, what's the point? What am I doing here?
Yeah.
So you want to get into this world, you better willing to get dirty. You have to be willing to get dirty. I've been told on...
Like, why take the reality out of it? Why take the reality out of it? That's the reality. And I think that's what the difference, I think why cops struggle so much is because we have no choice but to be exposed to the reality of life.
There's no whitewashing what we do.
We're forced to. Yeah, we're forced to see it. We're forced to do it. And everybody else can sit back from a distance.
Monday morning quarterback.
They can watch their Hallmark movies and they can live in their little bubble that doesn't see the things that we see. And they don't have to look at the world the way that we look at the world. And it's just, to me, I don't know. I agree with you that there's no, that man's story, that's his story, that's his life. That's the things that he's went through.
How many times on speeches?
And that's the adversity that he overcame.
I've been told you can't mention suicide. It's like, no, I am. If you don't want me to say suicide, you don't want me, because it is part of me now. I own it. So the thing with me is I own what I do. I screwed up a lot. And if you're not going to allow me to take suicide, I said, you are complicit. I just put a post up on my social media the other day because it was right after this happened and I was really ticked off. If we stay silent, we are complicit. Police officers in your department see something bad and that could help. And if they speak up, they could help another officer who may or may not be in trouble. But they won't say anything because they're too busy about their own careers. They're too busy worrying about if I say something, it's going to screw my life up. And they try to walk the middle of the road. Well, the middle of the road is the worst possible place to walk because you're getting crap from both sides. Pick a side. Hold true to your values, right, wrong, or indifferent. Hold true to your values. Police officers took an oath to protect and serve those that cannot protect and serve themselves or when they're in need. Yet we can't do it for our own kind. So I say to people who preach for mental health advocacy, you're going to need to get dirty. You're going to need to be uncomfortable. You're going to need to be, and I hate this word, but I'm going to say it. You're going to need to be triggered. Every time I won't sleep tonight. I know I won't sleep tonight. Every time I tell this story, I don't sleep. But guess what? I'll take it, because if someone hears it and somebody gets a little bit of hope from what they hear, all right, I'm good. I'll sacrifice that. That's what I mean by getting dirty. Say the things that are uncomfortable. Suicide, rape is a visceral word. That's why I chose the name of my podcast, The Suffering Podcast. I've had people contact me and say, the word's kind of rough. I don't know if I want to listen to that. If I just read that, I said, no, that's that. I put that word in there purposely because I want you to invoke a reaction. Anything we do in life, we got to be willing to take the risk of offending somebody. Not purposely. I'm not talking about hate speech or anything like that, but we got to be willing to put something on the line, because if you're going to stay vanilla in everything, you're going nowhere. You're not going to make a difference. Yeah. You're just going to ride the train like everybody else does. But I guarantee, I'll venture to say 70% of these people who identify themselves as a mental health advocate aren't willing to get dirty.
That was a big thing when we started 1078. Is I was really, really concerned. I'm sure, you kind of know my story. I was involved in an officer-involved shooting and the suspect died. And it sent me on not as wild of a journey as you had, but it sent me on a journey. And I felt like I needed to do something about it. And then when we started 1078, I started getting questioned on, are you sure you want 1078 to revolve around officer-involved shootings? Good luck getting funding. Good luck getting people interested in helping you out. Like, nobody's going to want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Like, why would any organization attach themselves to your organization? It's so political. It's so right-left. Why would you do that? And but this is me. This is my story. This is who I am. This is what's true to me. This is what I want to do. And even if it's, you mentioned something earlier, your faith, and then you said, if I can go through this story and I could tell my story and somebody can take something away from that, I'll take that suffering. Well, that's servant leadership, man. That's built into your faith. That's what God calls us to do, is put ourselves in uncomfortable situations and do things that we don't want to do that are going to benefit the rest of the flock.
It took a former NHL hockey player. It took a holy man disguised as a former NHL hockey player to return me to where I'm supposed to be. It gave me a lot of courage to have that, to speak up, to know that no matter what I do in my life, I know that I can fall back on my faith. I can lean into my faith, and I lean into it hard. And here's a cool faith story. Here's a story about living by example. I would go to church every Sunday, and I always ask my kids. I always ask my wife and my kids, hey, you want to come with me? No. Sunday morning, it's hard to get up. No. One day, my oldest, he's probably about 12 years old, he comes to me on a Saturday, and he's like, Dad, you going to church tomorrow? I'm like, of course I'm going to church. He goes, can I come? Of course you can come. Comes to church with me, kids never missed a Sunday. But, so now me and my son, that's our bonding thing. My youngest one, a little further down the line, asked me, he's like, hey, Dad, you going to church today? I'm like, of course I'm going to church. Can I come with you and Patrick? Of course you can. And so there's something to that, living by example. My two kids are living proof. They don't miss days now because they love it. They absolutely love it. They feel that stuff. Where I had lost that faith, it's now been reinvigorated. And I look back on my suicide attempt with the guns in my mouth, and it took me years to figure this out. That pause, that was my higher power telling me I'm not done yet. There's a couple more things I got to do. It gave me strength. Gave me strength to write a book. It gave me strength to do a podcast. I speak to some really messed up individuals. I have a litany of friends who are criminals, who are absolute criminals. Like Mike Dowd, John Elite, Matt Cox, even my friend Clark, he did 5 years for murder. But these are guys that I hold dear to my heart because they've changed their life. And I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too. You said a book. Tell me about this book.
I got together with a gentleman named Chris Anderson. You've seen Chris Anderson on TV. He was on First 48, and he also was on Reasonable Doubt with Fatima Silva. We had this chance meeting. I think, where did we meet? Clubhouse, I think it was. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm in a room, and we just meet, and we start talking. And there was a publisher in that room at that time, and she says, "Hey, would you guys be interested in to hop on a Zoom call? Talking about." She didn't even have a plan. Next thing you know, we come out of there, and Chris and I both have a book deal, and we write our books. My book was very easy to write. Right, my book was already written. Chris's book was already written. He just had to piece it back together. So, they're like, "Hey, can you get me 3,000 words by?" This started in December 2022. It's like, "Hey, can you get me 3,000 words by March?" Well, I turn in 20,000 words by mid-January. Like, I was ready to rock and roll. And the writing of a book is a very slow process, but it's called Man, You Are Crazy, because for a long time I thought I was crazy. I really did. I was listless. I was directionless. And I thought I was losing my mind. And I didn't know whether I was ever going to get it back. So what I'm hoping for in this book is, so the spouses or the people in the atmosphere and orbit of police officers are going to be able to read this and like, "Oh, that's why Matt was like that. I get it. I understand it." That's my hope for this book. The introduction is written by Dr. Sherry Campbell, who is an absolute expert. She's a doll too in post-traumatic stress and complex post-traumatic stress. She does a great job at quantifying our stories, which are intermingled, and bookending us both. And hopefully, I don't know when this is going to air, but our book launch is February 16th of 2024, so we're ready to rock and roll.
We'll air this on February 16th.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. It's a humbling experience.
Yeah, man. Your story is, people need to hear it. I know that it comes with a lot of difficulties on your end. I know telling that story isn't always easy. Telling any story that like this isn't easy.
That's why I'm not in the studio with you. I don't want you to see me cry.
Nah, dude, I'll cry with you. I'm not scared. I just had Annette Jansen on, and that was the last episode that we released, and she lost her husband in the line of duty, and I was sitting in the studio, and I was fighting back tears probably about half that episode. I just, she's such an amazing person, and her story is so insane, and the things that she's been through her life it's just out of this world. It's like the things that you've gone through, but you've now become the resident expert. You know what I mean? Like, you've been through so much, and there's so much that the younger generation of law enforcement can learn from your mistakes and the things that you've done right and the things that you've also done wrong.
The big difference with me is I sit in the middle. So you'll know police officers who are lazy loads, right? You'll know police officers who have half their face shot off. The two polar opposite sections of that, right? Well, my face wasn't shot off, and I certainly wasn't lazy. I sit in the middle. I sit where the majority of police live, seeing things day to day, eating all your feelings. You go through 1, 2, 3, 4 traumatic incidents, But just to give you a little window into that, so the true statistic is the average citizen will see about anywhere from 1 to 3 traumatic incidents throughout their life, and it's a pretty bad day for them. Police officers in a 20-year career will see upwards of 600. So take your worst day. If you're not a police officer, you're not a sworn law enforcement officer, take your worst day and multiply it by anywhere from 300 to 600. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane.
Well, Matt, this is all I got time for,
It's
but
insane,
I love what you guys are doing, and I wish you continued success, and I really hope you stick with it. I really do.
Yeah, dude, we'll keep in touch for sure. Yeah, I'll stick with it. Dude, one thing about me is that I don't know when to stop.
I'm too stupid to stop. That's what I say.
I'm just kind of that. Yeah, I'm just kind of that guy that when I want something to happen, I don't give up on it. But, dude, thank you so much for telling your story, and we'll stay in touch and make sure we promote the snot out of your book. People can learn so much from you and the things that you went through, and listen, God doesn't waste your pain either. So the things that you went through, God's going to use for the betterment of the kingdom. So
the great thing about 10.
Thank you so much for your time.
1078. I did vet you guys. Like, I did just a little bit of research, and the thing of it is you keep saying that you're grateful for having me on, and listen, I'm appreciative of that, but I seek out shows or organizations that I believe in, and I'm not looking for the big grab. Listen, if Joe Rogan calls me tomorrow, I'm not saying no. I will tell you that.
I'd hit it. Yeah, me either, dude.
But it's the shows that it's still passion driven, and that's why I like your show. And the messages you're putting out are sound, they're concrete, and they're solid. So listen, I'm telling you, just keep at
Appreciate
it. Please keep at it. And if you need my hand on anything, you reach out. You have my number.
I definitely will, for sure. I appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thanks for hanging in there to the end of the episode. I really appreciate you guys listening. One thing that our organization has kind of been struggling with is getting notified of officers who have been involved in officer-involved shootings. One way that we're trying to combat that is if you go to our website, www.1078project.com, you will see that we've added a place for our audience to refer officers. So if you are aware of a police officer who's been involved in an officer-involved shooting, you can go to our website, you put in their name, the department that they work for, and as much information as you have about them, whether they have kids, how many kids they have, if they're married. It just helps us design the box to the best of our ability to make sure we're giving them as many resources as we can. Also, if you're trying to support the 1078 Project, you can go to our website as well. You can see there's a place where you can buy merch. The Crafty Midwest Mommy has been grateful enough to donate all the proceeds for the t-shirts back to us. So if you're looking for a practical way to get a nice t-shirt and also support the cause, you can go to our website as well for that. And with all that being said, I really appreciate all the support. The podcast is doing much better than I thought it would be doing at this point, and that wouldn't be possible without you guys, our audience. So thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next week. The 1078 Project podcast is proudly sponsored by Deemed Fit. Deemed Fit is an activewear and a leisure company created for first responders. Be a part of their movement to instill confidence, motivation, and a willingness to keep pushing forward. Deemed Fit is a first responder-owned company looking to help first responders and their friends stay as physically and mentally fit as possible. Stay Deemed Fit.